I'm Ryan Szymanski, curator for Battleship New Jersey Museum and Memorial, and today we've got another Pictures Worth a Thousand Words video for you. This is a relatively short one. It's a single picture. It's not even of New Jersey, it's of Missouri, but I couldn't find a better picture of what's going on here that I wanted to show you. So this picture is USS Missouri during the Korean War. She's firing her 16-inch guns in shore battery support, probably in 1950 or early 1951, if I had to guess. Although the picture's undated and you can't see much of the ship through the explosion, which is something cool to talk about here. You guys always want me to do pictures of the guns firing, and this one, something unique is happening. So, first off, you can see that the aft turret has regular fireball. The forward turret fireball has a big black splotch in the middle of it. We'll come back to that in a second. If you look in the upper right-hand corner of this picture, you can see several black blurs. Those are actually the 16-inch shells. These are undoubtedly 5-foot-tall, 1,900-pound high-capacity rounds. And they're showing up on this camera clear as day. The muzzle velocity of an Iowa-class battleship is about 2,450 feet per second, which is pretty slow for a projectile that large. It takes 88 seconds for this thing to go its full 23-mile range. And during that time, you can follow these things in the sky because they're so big, moving relatively slow. And so there are a number of really good pictures out there of the shells leaving the barrels, and they're very, very visible. Photo altering, quote unquote, photoshopping, does exist for old pictures like this. During World War II, it was very common for the US Navy to doctor their photos and remove radar antennas from them and do other things like that. There's a very famous picture of HMS Agincourt with a float plane flying in front of her that did not exist during the life of that ship. So old black and white pictures like this can be photoshopped, but that is certainly not the case with these projectiles. They really do move that slow, and you really can catch them with the camera. So that's definitely worth talking about, but that's not the really interesting thing about this picture. Let's go back to that black speck in the forward turret where she's firing. If you look beneath that, just forward of the shock wave that's rippling out from the side of the ship, you can see a lot of white splashes in the water. One of those shells has exploded just as it left the muzzle of the gun, a fraction of a second after it was fired. Fortunately, it didn't explode in the muzzle, or that could have sheared off the entire barrel or caused other damage. There's certainly been other ships that have had that happen. A number of ships doing naval gunfire support have had their gun barrels explode and they peel back like a banana. I believe the French battleship Richelieu had one of her 15-inch gun barrels explode. So when she shows up in New York Harbor with her quadruple turret there at the bow, one of them is cut off just past the face of the turret. So you can do a lot of damage to the ship. I'm not familiar with any projectiles exploding in the barrel of an Iowa-class battleship, fortunately. However, they were known to explode just after leaving the barrel, particularly the high-capacity round. We know that it happened on New Jersey and was enough of a problem that they changed operating procedure in 1968. But I couldn't find a good picture of it. So we've got this nice picture of Missouri that one of you guys sent in. The high-capacity round has two fuses, one on the nose and one at the base. The armor-piercing round only has a base detonating time delay fuse. When you use the nose delay fuse, it is so sensitive and traveling at such a speed that it might not take much to set it off. Remember that baseball pitcher that hit a bird with a fastball? Something like that could detonate one of these shells. I'm not sure what the weather conditions are in this picture. During the Vietnam War, New Jersey's high-capacity shells had a bad tendency of exploding in rainy weather. They would hit raindrops as they were leaving the barrel and explode between the ship and the target. So, the simple solution to that? Deactivate the nose fuse and just use the base detonating fuse. However, it had to happen a couple of times for the crew to figure out what was going on. Remember, nobody's operated a battleship for for over a decade at this point, and it just isn't as much of an issue with the smaller caliber guns. If I had to guess, it is probably a rainy day here, and that's why this shell is going off prematurely. There are probably some other things that could cause that to happen. For example, if the fuse is set improperly, remember you have to arm the fuse individually when the shell comes up into the gun house. So if the fuse setting tool that you're using or the sailor's experience isn't perfect, something might go wrong, and it might cause this to detonate. 16-inch shells do have the capacity for time delay fuses, so if you set that at too short of a time, it could explode like that. The only times, though, that I'm familiar with this happening, on New Jersey at least, is in rain. Otherwise, there isn't a whole heck of a lot to talk about in this image. Really, the entire ship is obscured by the explosion, with the exception of the extreme bow. And it's not the best high-resolution picture. Just thought it was a cool thing to point out. One last thing to point out in this picture is you can see the water turning white and rippling away from those explosions. Some people cite this as the ship sliding sideways in the water. I think this picture does a really good job of illustrating that that is very much the explosion of the guns firing, displacing air downwards and causing the water to ripple out. And you notice that this explosion is localized around the gun turrets. If you look at the bow of the ship, you don't see that white line there from the ship sliding sideways in the water as the guns fire. If you look at the wake coming out of the back of the ship, you don't see it doing one of these from the guns firing and sliding the ship sideways in the water. Not only is the mass of the ship significantly heavier than the mass of the shells, not only is the friction of the water significantly more than the friction of the air that the shells are flying through, but the 16-inch guns have a recoil cylinder designed to absorb the recoil of the guns going off rather than transmitting that into the ship to push it through the water. We've done videos about this in the past. Battleships don't slide sideways in the water, and this picture helps illustrate that. So, what are some other things you notice in this picture? Let us know in the comment section down below. What are some other pictures you'd like to see me discuss in future videos? Head over to my Facebook page, which is linked down below. It's just easier to send pictures on Facebook than it is on YouTube comments. Head over there and send me the picture, and we might be able to include it in a future video. Battleship New Jersey receives operating support from the New Jersey Department of State, also from a number of other businesses and private individuals like yourselves. We really appreciate your support. There's a link in the description below if you'd like to continue donating to support the museum. You can also support us by liking, sharing, and subscribing so more people find out about us and the museum. Thanks for watching.